Hey guys, who's ready to talk about logic games? So I'm going to assume that you've read the pages I have uh, signed last week or whenever the fuck that was, and have worked through those exercises. So what I'm going to do with this video is work through a strict sequencing game and just kind of show that process in action. So let's just use this one. I'm I'm just gonna kind of shoot from the hip here and hope that I can in post put all the things on the screen where I want them to be. Um, some things to note: the LSAT is entirely digital now, so you won't be able to draw right on the problem on the paper, which used to be, a fun way to do it. You could like highlight the actual text there, but it's all on computers now. So actually working from a PDF is a completely reasonable facsimile since you'll be like looking at the screen and writing on your scratch paper. You do get scratch paper to use. Just as a quick note, they've been doing the LSAT Flex, which lets you take the LSAT from home on your own computer or laptop. I don't know if they'll still be doing that by the time you take the test, but it's kind of interesting because it's only 3 sections instead of 5. So that's kind of cool. Thanks, COVID. Maybe the only good thing to come out of this. But we can talk more about practicalities of the test later, or if you have any specific questions, of course, just email me. So let's work with this problem. Step one of what we're going to do here is look at the overview. The overview is the little paragraph before they tell you the rules that you're going to have to apply to the game. So what's ours here? Let me pull this up. A contractor is scheduling construction of 7 decks, F, G, H, J, K, L, and M, during a 7-week period, week 1 through week 7. Because of customers' requirements, exactly 1 deck must be built each week according to the following conditions. Okay, so there's 4 things that we want to make sure that we get out of this overview, and that is the SEAL questions. SEAL. That stands for situation, entities, action, and limitations. So the situation is just what's going on in this game? What situation am I dealing with? And you want to get a handle on that because it can be really helpful for making a sketch. You want kind of to make a sketch that helps visualize this information, so knowing the situation helps with that. The entities, that's the things that we are moving around, arranging, matching, or whatever. That's our decks, F, G, H, G, K, L, and M. So since we know those, let's just go ahead and put them on our scratch paper. Let's just write those down so we know what they are, we don't forget them, and we can refer to it quickly and easily while we're doing our work. Because ideally, we don't want to have to actually look at the question anymore once we've made all our notes and deductions and drawings and things. So, a lot of times you'll notice that the entities are not just letters, they're actual names. But when that happens, the makers of the LSAT, kind souls that they are, to have each name with its own first letter, and you can just use those first letters of the names to be your entities. You don't have to write out the full name every time. Action is what are we doing with these entities? So are we putting them on teams? Are we selecting a few from a larger group? In this case, what we're doing them is we have to put them in the week they go in. So we have to put them in order. So that's going to be an action called sequencing, and it is the game type here. It's important to know the game type before you start working so that you can apply the proper strategies and know what you're doing. So this is a sequencing game. where we're going to be putting these 7 decks in order. Now, the limitations are things that you want to note, of course, when they're there, but you also want to pay attention if they're not there. So this game has a very clear limitation. Exactly 1 deck must be built each week. So that's 1 deck per week. So we don't have any, it's not going to be like, you don't have to worry about 2 decks in the same week. You don't have to worry about any empty weeks that you can skip over. It's just going to be 1 for 1. Sweet. So with all of that information in mind, that brings us to step 2, making a sketch. So I'm going to try to stop saying so much because I'm saying it so often. Anyway, you want your sketch to be a tool to help you manipulate the information that you have in this game, to help take command of the game visually. And there's 3 things that I demand your sketch have. The first is clarity. It needs to be clear. Now, it doesn't need to be clear to anybody else. You can have a sketch that makes perfect sense to you and I don't understand it, but it must be clear. So you don't want to be, I just said so again, but you don't want to be using any ambiguous symbols. You don't want to have like certain things mean one thing in one type of game and another thing in another type of game. You want to, however you draw your games out, you need to be able to read it and understand it. So, damn it. So, clarity is important. It needs to be simple. You can't spend more time trying to decipher your own sketch than working on the questions. Point 2 that I want your sketch to have is consistency. And this goes to that you don't want the one symbol to mean something in 2 different games. So if you use like, I don't know, we'll come across examples and you'll see this as you do things, but like one thing that I see a lot of students try to use is like math symbols, like greater than and less than. And they use it to mean like, a greater than symbol will mean, oh, this one is before that other one. But then in other games, there's going to be something like green is used more often in the paintings than blue is, and then they'll put G greater than blue, and it means something different. So make sure that any symbols you use always mean the same thing. And clarity, consistency, and repeatability. You're going to be drawing this sketch over and over. Okay, like you're going to have one master sketch that you're using to make sense of the game and that you can refer back to. But for questions that give you new information, you're going to want to redraw your sketch and add that new information and make deductions from there. So it has to be something that's easy to draw over and over real quick. So if you want, you can pause the video here and see what kind of sketch you would make for this game. But here's how I would do it. Boop. I like for strict sequencing games to just do a series of dashes for however many slots there are to put things in. In this case, there's 7 weeks, so 7 dashes. Just it's real easy to just, on your paper, just you can do that over and over. It's super easy. You could, if you wanted, I guess, label each slot 1 through 7. I find that to be unnecessary because I happen to be able to count to 7. I've worked very hard to be able to do so. And it'll get in the way when I start putting in other information. So I don't like to use numbers underneath the slots. Now, if it was like days of the week or something, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever order days go in, because time has no meaning in COVID. But then it might be useful just so you could quickly tell, like, oh, this one's on Wednesday. So it has potential use. Anyway, now that we've got a sketch, it's time to go to step 3, which is the rules. So we need to decode the rules and make sure we understand exactly what they are saying. Nothing more, but nothing less either. It's very easy to make our own assumptions here or to misread a rule, so you absolutely want to be careful in step 3 when you're drawing out the rules. And there's kind of two possibilities. Some rules just give you information that you can put directly in your master sketch, and when they do, just put it directly in the master sketch. You don't have to write it out again. So if it says like F must be built during week 5, then you can just put that directly in the sketch. You don't have to write out F equals 5 or anything like that. And again, with the math symbols, I just really don't like to use math symbols. Anyway. But yeah, let's see. If you can't put it directly in your master sketch, then you have to draw that rule in a way that matches your sketch so you can easily see how it fits in. So our master sketch is these dashes where we're going to put letters on the top of the line showing where they go. Let's look at how these rules can be drawn out in that way. Our first rule is that G must be built sometime before K is built. So G is before K. So that's kind of good. It gives us a very specific order. We know that G has to go ahead of K. So how can we draw that? Well, we can just write down G and then K in that order. So that's cool. But I want some kind of way to indicate that we don't know how many are between G and K. There's nothing in that sentence that indicates that it's G and then K directly immediately. Now it could be, but all we have is at some time. So what I like to do is use ellipses for this. Just a little G dot dot K. This says to me that I know G is before K, but I don't know how many are in between them. It could be 0, it could be all of the other entities. So it could be like G first and K last, and that would still satisfy the rule. So yeah, G dot dot K. Rule number 2, L must be built either immediately before or immediately after M. In this case, we have kind of an opposite problem where we know there are no entities between them. L and M have to be directly next to each other. Unfortunately, we don't know which one's first. It could be LM or it could be ML. So how can we draw this out? Well, one way that I personally like to show that two things are directly next to each other is to use the dashes underneath them. So like 2 dashes with LM on top could work. And then you just write or ML. So we know it's one or the other. That's pretty good. Another way you can show that they go directly next to each other is just LM with a box around it. That can work too, whatever you prefer. It's just something that indicates that these two have to be next to each other, but that we don't know which one's first. So make sure you include that ambiguity in your drawing of this rule. Rule 3 I mentioned a second ago, it's just F must be built during week 5. So we don't even have to write down that rule. We just plop F down in spot 5 and we are good to go on that one. Rule 4 gives us a little bit of a fun one. J must be built during week 2 or week 6. So there's a couple ways we could do this. We could write the letter J under the 2nd and 6th slots. That's one way to do it. I like to use the underneath of the slots for possibilities, or so like things could go here, or if things can't go there, then you can put just not that letter. And you want to make sure you have a good specific symbol for not, because that's going to come up a lot on this test. I like to use the not symbol from logic, just because that's exactly what it means. It just means not. But that's hard to do on a computer, so I'm just going to use tilde, a little squiggly line. That can also mean not, because I have decided that it has, and I will always use it to mean that and nothing else. Actually, one reason I don't super like to use that is because sometimes I use it to mean approximately. Whatever, make your own choice, live your own life. But, so yeah, we could just put J underneath 2 and 6, but to me that means it's just somewhere where I know it could go. So what I'm going to do is just treat this like a limited option and just make another sketch. I'll talk more about limited options in a second. So I'm just going to make a second master sketch, put F back in slot 5, and in one of them I'll put J second, and in the other one I'll put J sixth. Pretty good, right? Works for me. So now that we have our rules down, it's time for step 4. This is the moneymaker. This is the big step right here. Before you go to the questions, make deductions about these rules. There are always going to be deductions, and often there's going to be like some big key deduction that once you get to it, you're like, oh yeah, that was good. I know a lot now. I can go on to the questions. A general rule of thumb is that it's what, 35 minutes per section. It's about it's always 4 games per section, exactly 35 minutes, which gives you about 9 minutes per section. Sorry, 9 minutes per game. Of those 9 minutes, I want you to try to spend 4 just setting up the game and making deductions. Make sure that you have made the deductions that you can make before you go on to the questions. Then that gives you about a minute per question, but if you have done your deductions well, a lot of times you'll already have answered the questions. So, what can we deduce here? Well, let me look. We know F is fifth, and we know sometimes that J can be second and J can be sixth. Beyond that, we have a lot of really loose, like really fluid entities here, like G is before K, but with an unlimited amount of space between them. L and M have to be next to each other, but we don't know which one's first. And have we even used all the entities? We have rules about F, J, G, K, L, and M, but H isn't even mentioned in the rules. So H is what I call a floater. It can go anywhere in there, and that just makes things hard again. Well, we have some tools that we can use when we're looking for deductions, and that is the blend checklist, B-L-E-N-D. B stands for blocks of entities. These are entities that are stuck together and move as a unit. So we have a pretty good block with LM. They have to move as a unit of 2. So that can give us some deductions. When J is 6th, our second sketch here, that means L and M cannot be 7th. So they would have to be somewhere between from 1 to 4. So on that sketch, I'm just going to go ahead and write not L and not M below spot 7. In the first sketch, when J is 2nd, that means neither L nor M could go first. So that's kind of cool. So I'll just write not L, not M. G and K is a block as well. And that tells us, well, since G has to have K after it, there's no way G can be last ever. So that's cool. So I'll just write no G under 7 in both sketches. Similarly, there's no way K could be first. So I'll just write no K under the first week in both sketches. Oh, I was talking about blend. L stands for limited options. And limited options is when you have only 2 ways that the game can go. It has to be either this way or that way. When you get that, it's not going to happen every game, but when you get that, draw out both situations. Every now and then there'll be a like 3 limited options case when it's worth drawing out all 3, but you're going to have to get used to some ambiguity and just leaving things unknown. But when you do know that it has to be one way or the other, draw them both out and make deductions for each of them, because that can tell you a lot. E stands for established entities, when you know where something goes. And we actually have some in this game. F is what an established entity. And because we have split it into limited options, we can treat J as an established entity and know that when it is second, that's where it is. N is for number restrictions. And so we've already seen how these things play into each other. Because we have a sketch where J is an established entity in sixth, and we have a block of LM, that's 2, that's a block of 2 with only one space, that's number restrictions. So the block with the established entity gives us a number restriction that tells us that neither L nor M can go 7th. And they would therefore have to go before F and J somewhere. Pretty cool, right? It's not that cool. It's kind of cool. It's fun. I love this shit. I think it's like a Sudoku. I think I said that before. I think it's more fun than Sudokus. But I'm crazy. Anyway, D in Blend stands for duplications. And this is usually the first one you want to look for. Duplications is when two different rules have the same entity in them. And you can just smash those rules together, honestly. There's a great example of this in the work I asked you to do in the book, but unfortunately here we don't have any duplications. Oh well. Yeah, none of these rules share an entity, so no duplications here. But let's see, anything else we can deduce? Well, we know K can't be first, G can't be last. L and M are kept out of the first and 7th positions in the two sketches, respectively. When J is second, we could have G first, and we could have H first. So when I know there's only two things that could go in a slot, I like to put, in this case, G/H in that slot. And I know it has to be one of those two, because there's nothing else it can be. J and F are established already. Can't be K, can't be L, can't be M, so it's got to be G or H. And then L and M would have to go in either 3/4 or 6/7 for sketch number 1. And then, yeah, GK or KH. I don't know, but it's real loose still, so I kind of just want to keep that in mind. There's not a lot I can write down other than G or H has to be first. In the second sketch, where J is 6th, since kind of the same thing, LM can't be 7th, and G can't be 7th, so the only ones left for number 7 in our second sketch are either K or H. So I'll put K/H in that one. And then we have spots 1, 2, 3, 4 to play with, which is kind of a lot. Again, it's real slippery. Depending on whether K or H is last, there's a lot that could happen. And so this is kind of the point where I'm like, I shouldn't write that stuff out. Like, I could be like, oh, it has to be G or H. Let me see what happens when G or H is there. But that's just going to lead to me drawing every single possibility. And if you've taken statistics, you know that as things increase, it's not exponentially. What do you call it when you have like the number and the exclamation point? Factorial. There's a bazillion possibilities. And if I write every single one out, it's just going to be a big waste of time. I would rather know what must be true, what must be false, and what could be true. Hopefully that sounds familiar. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with our deductions up to this point, so let's go to the questions. Our first question, as is usual, is what's called an acceptability question. It's just asking which of these is possible, which of these could be true. Yeah? Yeah? So we need to find, if it's looking for what could be true, all of the wrong answers must be false. Because if it could be true, it'd be the right answer, we'd circle it, we'd be done. I guess you don't circle it anymore, you click on it, but who cares? The best strategy for these initial acceptability questions, which is usually the first question of every game, is to literally go through the rules one at a time and see if those rules break any answer choices. So while I did say earlier that I would rather not look at the actual written rules, here it's easiest to do that. G must be built sometime before K. So we just scan through the answer choices real quick, looking for K before G. No. Oh, E has K first. Lose it. Cross off E. L must be directly next to M. So just look through for LM, see if any of them have them separated. A does. A's out. Just check the rest of them real quick. LM, ML, ML. Okay, we're good. So we're already down to the 3, B, C, and D. We don't have to check A or E anymore. Rule 3, F has to be 5th. That's an easy one to check. Just go down the list, make sure F is there. And it's not in C, so we lose C. We're down to just B and D. This is getting exciting, y'all. And rule 4, J has to be during week 2 or 6. All right, let's check those J's. Luckily, we only have to check B and D, and B has J's 7th. Get real. So D is the answer, and we're done. Easy peasy, easy points. I want you to get every single acceptability question on the test because you can just follow that, go through the rules, and it should rule out everything that's not the right answer. You can do this by looking at your master sketch and comparing each of the possibilities to the master sketch, but that's more of a hassle. Honestly, time is a factor here. So, question 2. If G is built at some time after F is built, which of the following must be true? This is what's called a new if question. And remember when I said I want your sketch to be repeatable? It's for new if questions. New if, new sketch. So let's draw a new sketch, and with this new rule, it's like a new rule just for this one question. So we got this new idea that G is after F. So we lay out a new sketch, draw out our new rule that G is after F, so be F dot dot G. Now we have a duplication. Now we see that it would have to go F dot dot G dot dot K. Amazing. All right, so in our new sketch, we'll fill in the information we already know, that F has to be 5th. Well, that is another duplication with our FG rule. So F followed by G followed by K. That already takes up those 3 slots. And since G is 6th, there's only 2 places for J to go, so where's J gonna have to go? 2nd. Boom. All right. Awesome. With those filled in, all we have left to put in is our ML block and H, our floater. Well, there's not enough room for LM first. It's a number restriction. So we'll just put M/L and L/M in spots 3 and 4 and H first. That was fun. It's almost fully determined. Look at that. Aren't we so smart? Back to our question. It's time to actually answer it. So, want a quick reminder, we are looking for must be true. So if the correct answer must be true, all of the incorrect answers could be false. So for any of these answer choices, if they could be false or must be false, we can eliminate them. So let's check. G is built during week 7. Nope, G is built during week 6. That must be false. Lose answer A. B, H is built during week 1. Yes, H has to be built during week 1. We're done. We did it. Ta-da! See? Deductions are magical. You make good deductions and it answers the questions for you, basically. Ideally, there are harder games than this. Anyway, onwards. I can go through the rest of the answers if you want. J is built during week 6. No, G is built during week 6. L is built during week 3. It could be, but it could be built during week 4. D could be false. eliminate it. M is built during week 1, must be false, eliminate it. Question 3. Now that we're done with question 2, our new sketch for question 2 with that new rule, we don't need it. It's not, that new rule isn't true anymore, but we can use it as an example of something that could be true. But we're moving on. Which of the following is a complete and accurate list of the weeks, any one of which could be the week in which K is built? So this is real messy. All it's really trying to say is, when could K be built? Which weeks could K be built in? So let's just look at our master sketch. So K can't be first. We know that because G has to come before it. And K can't be fifth because F is there. So if we, honestly, I would just be like, okay, so it could be 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, that's E, and we're done. Now, if you wanted to be safe, you can try putting K in each of the other weeks, and it's honestly not that hard to do. You could have G first, K second, LM third, fourth, and then F, J, H, easy. You could have G first, J second, K third, and then fill in the rest. You could have etc., etc., etc. Anyway, we know K could be 2, 3, 4, 6, or 7. That's E, and we're done. But if you did want to test them, that's why you would want a nice, easily repeatable sketch and the skill of making these deductions quickly. Which, by the way, I'm just going off the cuff here. This is just my approach. I know it's taking me 30 minutes to do this, but that's because I'm talking through it. Honestly, just you want to get to the point where this is second nature, making these kinds of deductions, being familiar with the kinds of deductions they are requiring you to make so that it becomes second nature, so that it becomes easy. I don't expect you to be making these deductions this quick yet. This is to give you an example of the kind of things to be looking for and how to look for them. Number 4. Which one of the following is a complete and accurate list of decks, any one of which could be the deck built in week 3? All right, it's kind of the opposite of that last question. So we go to our master sketches. We know that it can't be F because F is 5th. We know that it can't be J because J is 2nd or 6th. So we want to ask ourselves, can we figure out a way to put any of the others in week 3? And I mean, we could test this out for each individual one, but it's also pretty easy to see that it could be any of the others. I mean, we saw one in question 2 where it definitely could be L or M, right? Yeah, could be L or M because we already did one like that. So that eliminates options B and C already. So could it be G or H? Honestly, if I wanted to, I could test them out, but just thinking to myself, H is a floater, so H can go anywhere. I'm pretty sure we could figure out a way to put H third. And G, the only real restriction on G is that it can't be 7th, and I guess it couldn't be 5th either, but 3 is way towards the beginning of the sequencing. My hunch is just that it's probably fine. And if you test it out, yeah, you can very easily put G third, you can put H first, J second, GK third and fourth, and F fifth, LM sixth, seventh. So all we needed was could be true, and all of those could be true because they're all really loose. There's not a lot of restrictions on these letters here. So D is the answer. Everything but J and F. And this is the kind of question that when you get to like the high level stuff, this is a question that's going to take a second because you're like, well, the only ones locked down are F and J, so all of the others, because you get in the head of the LSAT test makers. Excuse me. Question 5. Another new if. New if, new sketch. If G is built during week 4. Interesting. Then there are exactly how many acceptable orders, any one of which could be the order in which the 7 decks are built. God, what a word spaghetti they love to make. Let's work on that new if first. Slap down a new sketch, put F 5th, like we know it is, and put G 4th. So if G is 4th, well, what do we know? And this is the kind of iterative thinking that you need to be doing with your deductions. Well, if I've been given this, what do I know about that letter? Or what does that leave left? So with G 4th, the thing... Sorry, I just got a picture in my mind of Tropic Thunder when, what's his name? Tom Cruise is playing that fat record exec, and he's like, G5, swinging past your knees. I love that movie. It's hilarious. Best Tom Cruise role ever, in my opinion, although I did really like him in War of the Worlds. Going off track a little bit here. So, if G is 4th, the only real thing we know about it is that it can't go 7th, and that K comes after G. Sorry, if G is 4th, K comes after it. So, where can K go? Well, it can't go 5th, obviously, so we have the 6th and 7th slots open. All right, well, if K is 6th or 7th, where am I going to fit in the LM block? Well, I'm not going to fit it in 6th or 7th, so L and M is going to have to come before G. With me so far? So if L and M are before G, that means one of them is going to be in the second slot. There's no way to avoid it. Well, if one of L or M is in the second slot, J has to be 6th. If J is 6th, that means K has to be 7th. And then the only one left is H. So let's go ahead and fill in that it's going to be G, F, J, K in slots 4, 5, 6, and 7. From there, we have to place L, M, and H. Well, since L and M is a block, they have to be either 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. That's close enough to limited options for me, so let's just draw that sketch out again. One with M and L first and second, and the other with M and L second and third. That just leaves H, so H is either going to be first or third. And this is the entire realm of possibility for this question. But what was it actually asking us for? There are exactly how many acceptable orders, any one of which could be the order in which the 7 decks are built. So it's asking us how many possible arrangements are there? How many possible orders work? So let's count. We could have HML. We could have HLM. We could have LMH. And we could have MLH. That's 4. We're done. That's D. Is that all the questions? Shit, alright, that wasn't too bad, was it? So that is the process. And this video is already 40 minutes, so I'm glad that's done. It's going to be a big pain in the ass to edit it, but probably not as much of a pain in the ass as actually taking the LSAT. So, this method, this approach, make sure you understand what they give you. Sketch it out and take control of it. Be careful that you're paying attention to exactly what they are and are not saying, and then make deductions before you get to the questions. Using blocks, limited possibilities, established entities, number restrictions, and duplications as tools to play off of each other to help you look for deductions that you can make. Think about what is possible and where things can go. Like, this has to go somewhere. Where could it go? But know when to not bother trying things out because there's just too many possibilities. As for the questions, for acceptability questions, just go through the rules one at a time. When it's a new if, you need a new sketch. When it's asking what, pay attention to your levels of truth. So when it's asking what must be true, you know to eliminate anything that could be false, and vice versa or whatever. And yeah. Thanks for sticking in this long. I had a great time talking to myself for an hour. Email me if you have any questions. I love you. A good night. And I will talk to y'all later. Bye.